All right, a little special episode of the Zach Clark Show today because Daddy ain't home. You know what I'm saying? He's over in London doing the run, and that's what it's going to be. We might hear from him later on, a little extemporaneous drop-in with Zach Clark prior to the London Marathon that's taking place sometime this weekend. I am not a runner. I don't run. I have flat feet, so that's my excuse. And I don't like running. And I know that's sacrilegious to say around these parts. And I know that when I say I don't like running, they're going to say to me, well, that's what everyone says who doesn't run. You know, don't knock it until you try it. But no, I've tried running, and my body doesn't seem to respond to it. But anyway, today we wanted to get on and talk about a few things. I have my producer, one of our producers, Sarah Prazmark, known as what? Hi. She's off camera. You'll thank us for that. You'll thank us for that. But so we're gonna talk. You know, we had a guest on that the episode hasn't come out yet, and it's someone who is very close to Zach Clark. When we were having this conversation, I got a little emotional talking about my family because, you know, one thing, I've been 17 years sober. I've talked about that, but if you don't know, I'm 17 years sober. That's how I met Zach over a decade ago in this process. And I think that, you know, one thing that I've sort of realized in having these conversations with people who are close to substance use or have been affected by loved ones who struggle with substances is, you know, what that experience is really like for people who are trying to help someone else who's struggling. And I just got very emotional because I have two young children. I am predisposed to, you know, the disease of addiction or whatever you want to call it. I still am confused about the language, and I know we've gone back and forth on this. I think, and I'm just going on a little tangent here, that, you know, the Dr. Polin episode, which I do encourage anyone to go back and look at, she did say something that was very, very interesting, where it's not necessarily how we talk about the person who has it. It's using different language can help the person talk about themselves. And also, you know, when you're talking about the medical community, there is some sort of subliminal or subconscious benefit of, you know, referring to substance use disorder, or someone has struggles with substance use, rather than the negative connotation of, you know, they abuse substances, because look, at the end of the day, and I'm stealing this from a past guest as well, John Lieberman, you know, still fundamentally the biggest struggle to talk about this stuff is stigma. And that word has been parodied and, you know, blown up 300,000 feet into the air. But the reality is that talking about this shit still is hard to do. And, you know, I know someone in my life right now who's very close to me, and she's a public figure, and she doesn't talk out loud about, you know, her sobriety. And I think the fear is that you are revealing something about yourself that is ugly or damaged or wrong. And I think like that is like the fundamental issue. We've used this analogy before, you know, a person with cancer, a person with diabetes, or has some sort of chronic disease. Like they're not, the feeling around it is different than someone saying I'm an addict, you know. And Sarah wrote something on her phone in little yellow writing. That's a question for me. And the question is, do you call yourself an addict?
Like, what's the difference for you? What does the language mean for you?
I gotta be honest. Like, if I say the word addict, it is so, the idea of an addict is so ingrained or inculcated into my mind of someone not like me. It's someone who's like living at the bottom under the bridge, is homeless or lost their, and I don't think that anymore. Like
it's literally just like 3 letters that change.
Addict
And addiction.
Addict 6 letters, isn't it?
No, but I mean, like, we're not comfortable using. Some people are not comfortable using the term addict, but they say, yeah, I have an addiction, and it's just like it's really kind of.
Well, I feel like if you say I'm an addict and I have an addiction, I feel like that brings up the same thing. I mean, look, I think it's a lot easier to say like, oh, I'm fucking addicted to eating, M&Ms at 3 a.m. I can't stop. But if I say like I'm addicted to fucking sniffing heroin at 3 a.m, people will look at someone saying that a little bit differently. It's hard because I don't think the language should matter, right? Like I think that the problem is it's just the
in your height, in your prime, like your career high of partying,
addictionhood,
how would you reacted if somebody was like, hey Jay, I actually think you're an addict?
I probably would have said like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Because first of all, my first real issue was with alcohol, right? And like, you don't say like, oh, you're addicted to alcohol, right? Like you say like someone says, you say you're an alcoholic, right? Or you have a problem with drinking. So I would have said like, I'm not. I think the issue for me was when I got into other substances like cocaine, where like I was really like doing it, having a bad night, the worst night, and then saying I'm never going to do it again, and then like doing the worst night again. And that happened enough to where I was like, something shifted in me, and I really felt like this isn't normal. I probably wasn't calling myself an addict, but.
Did you use cocaine like without alcohol, or was it like always?
Yeah, I started to. Well, that's the problem with all this stuff, is that it really is like it really is a progression, and I think like that's what's scary about alcohol and also weed, and even just using with Mr. Lieberman talking about like with ADHD, if you're introducing someone who may be predisposed to substance use disorder. If you're introducing like a stimulant or an amphetamine, then are you sort of nudging them towards the black abyss? I mean, for instance, and this is something I was going to bring up, going back, I think one of the issues is that there is still just so much misunderstanding and misinformation about what addiction looks like in someone, right? Because a lot of times you may not see it and someone is struggling. And for every person that you can say like, oh, that's a personality type that is prone to substance use, which I have said before, you can then go find like a line of other people who are not out there, running around the city at 5, 6 in the morning doing awful things. There's the person who doesn't ever leave their home and just sits on their couch and can't stop drinking wine because they're so terrified of leaving their apartment. So it's hard to say like, this is like with diabetes or someone who has high blood pressure or high blood sugar or is overweight. My cholesterol actually is I have high cholesterol. I did have high cholesterol, and then I was prescribed a statin, which I was like, fuck, am I gonna have to take a little orange pill for the rest of my life? And I didn't want to be dependent on it. And you know what? Like I took this little orange pill every night, and my cholesterol is now 156. It dropped over 70, 80 points. I'm only 42 old. But Sarah, you're about to jump in. Hold on, because when I went to the doctor, my primary care physician thinks I'm nuts. She thinks like a lot of my issues are anxiety. And she's like, at some point you're probably going to have to address your anxiety. But I was talking.
You just went raw dog leg, Jay. Like you.
I know.
Yeah.
Because I'm scared of what will.
Is that why you didn't want to take the orange pill? Like,
No, I didn't want.
Your past kind of gets in your head about taking that cholesterol.
No. Not with the cholesterol pill, because the cholesterol pill wasn't going to produce an effect in me that was like physical or like that I could feel.
But do you get scared that you'd have to depend on it?
No, I feel like I'm young, and I didn't want to be like, like an old man with like my pill jar, like Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, fucking lined up for me, because I'm just like, I'm too young for that, But like now I have my pill like in the same place every day so that I can take the pill. But I was talking to my doctor about, because I have had a relationship with nicotine off and on for 20 years, which is like, I hate saying that out loud, because it's definitely the final frontier for me. And I was talking to her about how I'm aware that nicotine, I do these Zyns, and they're these little pillow pouches that you stick in your lip, and they absorb into your bloodstream, and no one notices that you have one in, and you don't smell. And so there's a lot of benefits, and they're tobacco free. Little pillows, and they become really like politicized, and like, like in like the manosphere as like the accessory of choice. I'm here to say I was using that shit before they popped off like that, because I was, and like I only am using them because they do the job. They don't reek. I don't smell when I use them. And
you know what the kids call those?
Upper Deckies?
No.
There's some dude.
6
million pillies. There's some dude there's some dude who's like he's like a younger, he's like Gen Z dude. We have our other colleague here, Naya, who's represents the Gen Z contingency. But like he talks in a way on his social channels where I'm like, I don't understand one word you just said. Like you're like. But he's like, hey guys, got an upper decky and the top lip here, gonna flip one old cheddars, gonna do it. And I'm like, who the fuck are you, dude? But like, I can't stop watching him like hit a golf ball, talking about he's got like 10 Zyns in his mouth. Anyway, I'm sorry. So this is Zyn, right? And the pitch on Zyn is that it doesn't have all the carcinogens that are associated with cigarettes and tobacco. You're not ingesting anything in your lungs, but there's nicotine. It's straight nicotine. There's some other shit in there that I'm sure causes cancer, but like.
Well, it just makes you feel like shit. Nick's sick.
But no, nicotine. I have a friend who's smoked cigarettes for 25 years. And I said, dude, like he's about to have his first kid. I said, dude, you got to quit smoking now. He has a history of heart disease in his family. Yeah. And I gave him one of these that's 6 milligram, and it almost knocked him on his ass.
Well, I saw something that was like a 2 millimeter Nicotine Lodges, because I'm trying to come up nicotine too, is the equivalent of 1.5 cigarettes.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
But it's not even that too. It's also that for this, it's with a cigarette, you're doing that over a couple minutes. You're taking a drag at a time. This is like, put it in and it's just flooding.
Well, you also can do it indoors. You can do it at the dinner table.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah. I remember you used to be able to smoke cigarettes indoors though. And I remember in college, like there was this restaurant that like they put like a wood, they put a plywood over the kitchen so that they could separate the kitchen from the dining area. And then you would be allowed to smoke cigarettes.
Dude,
I thought that was like the holy grail.
When I lived in Atlanta, I was ripping darts at the Ivy in 2017.
Yeah.
Like you could smoke inside bars still.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so I told my doctor, I said, I'm aware that nicotine can constrict your arteries and is not good for your heart. This isn't really talked about that much, and we just recently spoke to a cardiologist who sort of affirmed this, that nicotine is not good for your arteries and your overall your heart. But I'm talking to my doctor about Zyn, and like and I love her. She's great. Like she's great. She's thorough, and like she doesn't really know what it is. She doesn't. I took it out. I showed her an upper decky, and I was like, "This is how you do it. You put it in your mouth, and it goes right into your and." Because she said she has seen like more younger people having higher blood pressure.
Okay, can I ask you a semi-personal question?
Well, I guess I'm sitting here in a chair with a microphone on my face.
Do your kids know like what those are? Like, don't touch those.
No, they don't know what they don't know what they are.
But like at one point, like your daughter's of the age where she can ask. Like if she opened it and was like,
I've said it's candy, and I would never let them open it, and I try to keep it out of the way, but of course they invariably find it. My son will run up to me and like it'll fall out of my pocket and he'll throw it at me. Yeah. No, but that's my goal. My goal is to like eradicate it from my life. Like no trace because I don't do it. Because I don't even like the fact that I'm pushing the stroller to school and thinking about when I'm going to put my upper decky in. Or I have done it where I'm pushing the stroller and I wait till I'm down a dark side street and I'm like pushing the stroller. Can I tell you something really sick?
Yes, of course.
Because I when I had my daughter in 2018, I was an actor in a previous life, and I had just come back from doing a movie, terrible, and I started smoking cigarettes for the character. I was doing it for the character, and really I just couldn't wait to be alone, free pass, smoke cigarettes. And I developed a habit again. It hooked me. I just think some people are predisposed to where they metabolize nicotine at a faster rate. Like my body craves it, and so I was smoking cigarettes with like my newborn, and I remember like going to meet.
Wait. Let's backtrack. Like you're not smoking while like holding your newborn.
No, but I'm pushing her in a stroller, and like.
Do you have gloves on?
I don't have gloves on, but I have on smoking gear. I have clothes on that like I'm going to stuff into a bag and then immediately wash. Last week though, and I sort of respected how unapologetic this woman was. There was this woman pushing a stroller in the street who was just casually just smoking a cigarette, like with a baby. Did not give a fuck.
Okay.
And like this is in broad daylight. Like I'm in a corner like sucking and blowing. And you feel like an asshole. You feel like an asshole. But the feeling of assholeness is just not strong enough to not do it. Because there are people who are like, I stopped, and I've never been able to do that. And I'm thankful that I stopped drinking and using drugs at a young enough age, because I feel like the older you get, the harder, and this may be, I'm just from my own experience, like I just feel like that it's been harder to break habits the older I've gotten.
Do you find as like a parent, like I hate the word vice, but do you find as like a parent and like kind of going into this new identity where you're focused on your kids and etc., like you use nicotine as a little bit of like an escape, like it's like your one tie to like your old independent life?
Well, I think it's the same as the way people use coffee. Where someone's like, I go to bed so I can wake up and have my first cup of coffee, right? Like I don't go to bed. Yeah, I've heard people say that, Naya. Like you don't drink coffee. Gen Z doesn't drink coffee.
None of Gen Z drinks coffee.
No, they do. I mean, think of like Emma Chamberlain and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, she's like a whole.
I think honestly, Gen Z revived iced coffee.
Say again. Gen Z revived iced coffee. No. Sorry.
No,
Wrong.
true.
Gen Z revived iced coffee?
No, okay, I didn't say we made it up. I said
You said revived,
revived.
as if it was dead. Dude, iced coffee has never died.
No,
See, this is what happens when Zach leaves the country.
But you feel like I feel like I'll have an iced coffee if it's 10 degrees or 90 degrees. I just prefer iced coffee. It makes me feel like I'm drinking. I'm not really into the flavor of coffee. I like that I can make it taste like a milkshake.
What stood out to me of Lieberman, what John Lieberman said was, introducing substances to younger children also introduces the idea that a substance and or a chemical will make things better. And I find that even with caffeine. Like I'm tired right now in my head, I'm thinking, oh, if I have a coffee, like I'll feel better. Instead of like going for a walk or addressing my sleep habits.
Well, so going back to your question, is the nicotine a partial escape? I don't know if I would have said escape, but I would say nicotine is like it's a little movie in my day. It's a little treat. It's like I'm going to have this thing. It's going to hit me. I'm going to, I'll have it for 30 minutes. I'll be a little altered.
Okay, tough question incoming. Do you think nicotine makes you a better parent?
I think the lie of nicotine, just as it is with the lie of substances, is that it makes anything better. Because I used to smoke cigars. I stopped smoking cigarettes, and then I didn't do anything, and then I met a friend, and he smoked. And the first time I smoked a cigar, I literally had to go lie in the bathroom and just wait for
Did you inhale?
I didn't inhale. It just was a very strong cigar, and I never smoked, and it just knocked me on my ass. And that experience did nothing for me.
Yeah.
Like the nicotine did its job. And so I started smoking. And I used to say cigars are different. There's an artistry to them. There's a flavor. Like there's an experience.
Yeah.
But when I started smoking cigarettes again after doing this thing, I didn't want to smoke cigars anymore. So like this whole narrative around how like I really enjoy a good cigar, and I do enjoy, I rarely smoke them now, but like I do enjoy like a good cigar. But I wouldn't say that like I love cigars. I just fucking was addicted to nicotine,
Yeah.
and I told myself a story that it was the really I was into the cigars, and I feel like it's the same thing with I like to come home and have a beer to unwind. I like to have a glass of wine. I mean, look. Does it produce?
Yeah, look at the idea of drinking on your wedding day, right? It's
Well,
part of the whole day is the toast and the champagne.
Well, that's like number one of like when you hear people come into recovery, basically, how am I not going to drink on my wedding day? How am I not going to blah 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 blah? And like,
because there's this weight to it of like just like you were saying with the cigar, it's like, oh, it's this image, it's the smell, it's the vibe, and it's like all wrapped up into one, but really what it is it's the nicotine, and for the champagne, it's the alcohol.
and I just wonder though if normal people who don't have an issue with alcohol really even consider that, right? Because like they're thinking about, the experience of getting married, being with their family and friends, the celebration, planning the wedding, all that shit. I drank and did drugs because I, number one, loved the way it made me feel. And I also thought that it allowed me to come out of myself. And I think that's bullshit, right? I think that someone may be nervous or may be anxious or may be socially uncomfortable. But to establish a pattern where you're using a substance to come out of yourself.
Yeah, but how old were you when you started to really click that, oh, hey, if I drink this or if I smoke this, I will come out of my shell? How old were you?
Oh, I mean, maybe I wasn't consciously saying that to myself at that time, but like I knew that the first time I drank, whether it's
How old
11, like 11, 12, I knew that, Friday nights with my friends, and we're just roaming around the neighborhood, like trying.
Drink with your parents? Like, was it like a thing to be like, oh, Jay, like with dinner, why don't you have a sip of my wine? Like, was that?
No,
growing up?
I never drank with my parents, and I didn't want to drink with my parents because I didn't feel like I could drink the way I really wanted to. Don't shake the camera. No. So I didn't, but my parents did allow us to drink at home. They did allow us to smoke pot at home. They did because their whole thing, and Mr. Lieberman mentioned this, and we keep mentioning Mr. Lieberman. He's a teen recovery expert at Visions Treatment Center, which deals primarily with adolescents. They felt like they had more control, right? And that we were safer because we were home. And to some degree, I think that's true, because when I think about some of the things that I've done in terms of drinking and driving and just making poor decisions as a non-fully developed person out there, like it terrifies me.
Where did you grow up again?
South Florida.
So, like, what was when you're 16, a sophomore in high school, right? Like, what did your Friday night look like?
Well, when I was 16, I was very focused and determined a basketball player. So like I made a point even at that early age that I wasn't going to party. So my drinking really sort of took off when I was 18, and I moved to New York to go to school here, and I was terrified because this was like another step into real life, and I really wasn't prepared. The problem with drinking and all this and using substances is that you have the sense of development, or like that something's happening to you while you're doing them, but you're really like restricting yourself. you're really like preventing yourself from like being able to, like I had a problem walking into a room to like say hello to my family. Like I've said this before, like my sister could come in and just like kiss everyone hello. Like,
Which is like crazy to me because y'all are twins, right?
yeah. I was very uncomfortable with even like those kinds of simple interactions with family. So, you know, but I still think about it, and I talk about this with my wife too. Like, we still think about like, yeah, it would be nice to like put on some shitty television and just have a couple glasses of wine, you know, like just check out. And of course you can check out without doing that. But like, look, alcohol works. Drugs, they work. They work too well. You know, and if you're someone who has a problem, bless you, Naya. If you're someone who has a problem, then eventually that working too well is just going to put you in a very bad spot, you know. We talk, yes. Yeah, go ahead. So this is turning into more of like a Q&A sort of session here, but appreciate you guys hanging with us.
Well, I think it would be interesting to talk about how you're in recovery, and obviously you've talked about your kids and they're younger, and your wife is also sober. Is it okay if I say that?
Yeah.
And so are you. And so how do you think you and your wife or you are going to approach your kids when they get older and start getting curious about alcohol?
Well, that's a great question, because my feelings about that have sort of shifted from doing this podcast and speaking to experts, because what I've been hearing from people like Dr. Cara that we had on, and from John Lieberman and a few others, is that actually prevention and like shielding them can be effective, because the longer that they delay trying these substances, the less likely they're going to develop a chemical dependency if they are predisposed to that. So what I would have said to you before is like, I probably would have a frank conversation with them at an appropriate time and be like, listen, like people are going to do, we're going to experiment, your kids, you're going to have fun. We are people that don't really agree with that. Like, and you should be careful using alcohol and drugs.
Tell them why? Like, will you be honest?
Well, I'll say that, like, I mean, I don't know. See this, I will be honest, but I'll be honest in a way that I think is appropriate.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think the idea of, and it's also too, like, how young is appropriate? Like, is this conversation going to be relevant for me, which is terrifying, this conversation was relevant at 12 years old,
Yeah. Well, I think also now with kids and media, like it's different. Like, I have a nephew who's turning 13 years old, and he already is exposed to like, the vapes and this and that, and he saw my vape once, and I was hiding it and did this stupid thing by being like, oh yeah, it's like a USB drive or whatever, because honestly I was embarrassed. Like I was embarrassed. And after, like, he was like, I just thought you were such an angel. Like, I didn't know that you'd be someone who would like vape. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, oh my god, you have no idea like half the stuff I've done. But
Right.
like, the messaging is working from, I guess, both sides that we didn't necessarily have, where it's like vapes are here and that's what they're for, but also vapes are bad. And like, I just remember, like, when I was that age, it was just cigarettes. Like, cigarettes were bad, but like my parents smoked them. Like, people still smoked them. Like, it wasn't necessarily as much as like hiding as there.
For sure. But you know what? Like, this is where I go back and forth between like nature versus nurture. Like can you create an environment where you protect them, or are they destined to just do it if it's sort of in their genetics? Because initially my relationship to cigarettes in high school was, I thought they were disgusting. I thought I hated them.
I used to steal my mom's butts out of her ashtray and smoke them. It was disgusting.
But I mean, I had that curious phase when I was younger, but like the more as I got older and I saw other people in my family who smoked, I thought it was gross. And my sister was smoking cigarettes. I remember like being like 18, like literally being like, and I'm drunk at the time, like ripping one out of her mouth. Like, that's fucking gross, and you shouldn't do that. cut to like 3 years later, I meet a girl who smokes cigarettes, and like, you know, I'm smoking cigarettes to be cool and fit in and get her to like me, and then that sets me on a course of a 20-year relationship with nicotine. So my attitude about it completely changed. But really, at the end of the day, like, I was someone that if I was exposed to nicotine, I was going to get addicted. So with my children, I really feel like I just would want them to know that, like, this is an unhealthy thing, and we're also I'm also someone that it's really unhealthy for, and to be careful. But when I hear people like Mr. Lieberman and Dr. Pullen, I'm like, actually, like, maybe go hard. Like, really, maybe, like, lock them up. I mean, not lock them up, but, you know, keep them away from it. But, like, you can't, you know, like...
Because then you also want your kids to be able to talk to you about it. I really know you want your kids to be able to talk to you about anything.
Of course. And you
like,
can't shield them anyways. My daughter is 6 years old. Like, do you know, like, she says things to me or to herself, because she'll often be, like, in the corner in some outfit, like, on her tippy toes, like... randomly, like, talking to herself a million miles a minute. She says things that she overhears, right? And that they overhear. And like, and so you can't control that channel, you know? So you just, I think a lot of times, and I hate to, like you gotta get lucky. Like, you just gotta, like, you obviously gotta create an environment where they know what's good and what's bad. But like, most people do that. You just hope that they have a good head on their shoulders and you know, aren't a maniac like I behaved at various points, you know? I hope that that there was some sort of through line to this little minisode here. I wanted to get Zach on from London, but let me check here. He ignored my text. So that's fine. He's at dinner. He's carving up. He's getting ready to run. Good luck. Run hard. Run well. Keep going. So we're gonna end here. Like, Sarah wants the bar mitzvah story. Like, there really isn't a bar mitzvah story. I blacked out. You know, like, I had a bar mitzvah, and there was a vodka luge shaped like something, but it was just vodka. 1993, maybe? No, 1996. And I just, like, I'm just saying that we talk about a lot of times that people have this, people with substance use have a peculiar mental twist, right? Like, it's just not normal to be 12, 13 years old and, you know, excited about how you're going to get drunk at your bar mitzvah, you know? And then...
Did you go into it being like...
Oh, yeah. I went into it knowing that, like... Because it wasn't like that was the only bar mitzvah or party that I was drinking at, you know? I just knew that at mine, I would have free access and I was going to get drunk. And, like, you know, we just have video of me as a 13-year-old kid, and I look... stupid, you know, and I don't really remember much of it. And I think that's sad. And I'm trying to think about how I would be as a parent, because I think, to your point about, like, there's a fine line between allowing kids to be kids. And we've definitely been talking a lot about that. And then also really, you know, creating and exerting some control and helping shape their journeys. So it's scary to me, because I couldn't imagine my 12-year-old son or daughter behaving that way, you know. And I don't think I imagine that, you know, it's not crazy now for, I mean, they said 10 and a half is the average age that someone will, you know, experiment for the first time. I mean, that's crazy. And, like, that's what scares me about nicotine. That's what scares me about weed. And, like, I was smoking weed when I was that young too, you know, and you know, and the weed was different back then, right? I mean, I don't know if it got me pretty fucking stoned, you know?
For all you know.
I mean, all I knew is that, like, it took me, it altered me. So, But I do get scared because it's so accessible. You see it everywhere, you know, and it's just not everyone can do it responsibly, you know, and so we should talk about it responsibly. And I don't think we do all the time. So anyway, we're going to put this out. Thanks for listening. And please, you know, we welcome any comments or questions. We are going to try to do at least monthly an episode where we're answering questions or, you know, discussing things that are current and happening and relevant. But send any questions or comments our way, and we definitely will respond and talk about them on the show. Peace.